Okay, so in this video, I was going to talk about my top 15 favourite films from 1973. Couldn't quite narrow it down to 10. There were just too many good ones from this year. My list is in accordance with IMDb, and again, this is no real, true, definitive list. These are just my personal favourite films from that year. There's no right or wrong. So to start off with, though, I do have some honourable mentions, so we'll get into that. So first honourable mention is Papillon, great prison movie with Dustin Hoffman and Steve McQueen. Another one is Sleeper with Woody Allen, great sort of futuristic sci-fi comedy film, quite underrated. Next, I've got Theatre of Blood. Horror film with Vincent Price as an actor who pretty much gets revenge on critics who pretty much slate him as an actor and don't really like him. And he sort of disappears for a while and comes back and gets his revenge in really creative ways. The Last Detail, great early Jack Nicholson film. Westworld with Yul Brynner. I know there's been recently in the last few years a TV series, but I've only ever seen this film. Sort of like an attraction theme park where they have different worlds you can enter, and they've got robots that are quite realistic, but it all goes a bit tits up. Second Dirty Harry film, Magnum Force. Sort of quite an underrated sequel. Not the best, but it's still pretty good. It follows a lot of like these rogue cops that Harry has to deal with. But yeah, as I said, quite an underrated sequel. Next one I've got is Malcolm McDowell in Oh Lucky Man. I think this was his next film after Clockwork Orange. I'm not sure. But yeah, it's got him. It's got Helen Mirren, and for Dad's Army fans, it's also got Arthur Lau. Him doing sort of blackface though, which doesn't really hold up nowadays. My last honourable mention is Save the Tiger, which Jack Lemmon's in, and he also won Best Actor for that year. So yeah, they're my honourable mentions. So I'm going to get into the list. So number 15 for me is Charlton Heston in Soylent Green. Sort of set in this dystopian future in next year, 2022, where it follows pretty much the fact that the world has become overpopulated and food is really short of supply. So what humans eat instead is this product called Soylent Green, which everyone's informed of. It's sort of sourced from the sea and the oceans, but that's just not the case. Not to get into spoilers, but that isn't what Soylent Green is. It's quite grim when you find out what it is. So yeah, number 14 for me is Paper Moon. Follows this con man who ends up sort of looking after this orphan he meets at her mother's funeral. She sort of overhears a conversation he has where he gets left $200, but the orphan interprets the conversation that it is actually the money actually belongs to her, but he spends it on fixing his car. So the movie is he has to like try and con money out of people to try and replace the money he owes her. Really good film though. Number 13 is an early Martin Scorsese film for me, Mean Streets. It's got Robert De Niro, Harvey Keitel. Sort of follows the sort of loan sharks in the Italian American sort of New York setting. Really good. Number 12 for me is a bit of a historical western. It's Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid with James Corbin, Chris Christopherson and Bob Dylan. Really surprised to see Bob Dylan in this film. I didn't know he really did much acting back then, but yeah, he's one of my favourite artists. It sort of follows them and their run-ins with the law. Great Western. Number 11 is a really good horror film called Don't Look Now with Donald Sutherland. Really, really shit your pants ending to this when the big reveal happens. So pretty much throughout the whole film, he's mourning the passing of his daughter, but he keeps thinking he sees this figure, and he can never quite catch who it is. But it's all revealed at the end who it is, and yeah, it's pretty terrifying. It's one that sticks with you. Great horror film. Number 10 for me is another really creepy horror film. Is The Wicker Man with Christopher Lee. It sort of follows this detective who has to go to this small town. He's been called there to investigate the disappearance of a child. But when he gets there, nobody claims to have heard from her, and it just escalates. Then his investigation. It's like, how high does this go? Yeah, very very creepy ending as well. So number 9 for me is Roger Moore's first outing as James Bond in Live and Let Die. It's got a very sort of black exploitation feel to it, this film, but I love it. I think it's great. He did some really really good Bond films, Roger Moore. He has this sort of aura about him where it's like it's sort of a comfort factor to watch his Bond movies. But his first one's great. It's really really entertaining, particularly the final act. Great villain as well with Kananga, and great Bond girl with Jane Seymour. Yeah, really really good film. Also, it's the little quirky characters as well, like the sheriff, who also shows up in the next one as well. He's absolutely hilarious. But yeah. Number 8 for me is actually the Best Picture winner from 1973. It's The Sting. Sees Robert Redford and Paul Newman reunite after Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. They both sort of play like these con men who have to try and get money from a mob boss, played by the great Robert Shaw. Yeah, a really good film, worth checking out. Number 7 for me is a serious sort of cop drama, which sees Al Pacino in Serpico. Sort of follows the New York Police Department and the corruption going on there. Yeah, really good drama, and directed by Sidney Lumet, who did one of my favourite films, 12 Angry Men. But great film. Number 6 is the George Lucas film, American Graffiti. It takes place in 1962. It sort of follows this group of 4 friends on their last night of summer vacation in 62. Just sort of following them, getting up to their antics they get into. A great sort of movie that doesn't really have a plot. It's just sort of a time capsule of strange events that happen. Harrison Ford's also in this. Richard Dreyfuss, Ron Howard. Great sort of underrated movie from the 70s, I think. Number 5 is Clint Eastwood in High Plains Drifter, and Clint Eastwood also directed this as well. He sort of plays this stranger that comes to this town that sort of like it's desperately being harassed. You know, there's like a whorehouse there that's some of the prostitutes are constantly getting raped and that, and they sort of seek his help. Great action scenes. It's quite violent as well, but definitely worth a watch. Number 4 for me is Terrence Malick's Badlands, which stars Martin Sheen, Sissy Spacek. It's sort of she's this sort of she's a 15-year-old girl and he's a 25 sort of garbage man who's also a war veteran, and they form a relationship, but her father doesn't like him at all. I think he gets there's like a sort of themes there of statutory rape as well. He's because he's a lot older than her. They end up getting into all sorts of trouble. He ends up actually killing her father. Spoilers, but yeah. And they go on the run, and it doesn't end well. But it's a great film, great soundtrack as well. I think Tarantino used it in True Romance with Tony Scott as well, because I saw True Romance first, and the soundtrack really stuck to me in that film, and then it sounded really familiar in this. So I don't know if it ripped it off, but no, Badlands is really, really good. Number 3 for me is a Bruce Lee absolute classic, Enter the Dragon. Great martial arts sort of tournament film. The villain's this guy who's pretty much a sex and drug trafficker, and detectives have sent Bruce Lee in to sort of investigate it, and Bolo Young is absolutely terrifying in this film. He's sort of like the right-hand man to the main villain. The guy is just muscle and terrifying. When he has to be up and kill these other sort of bad goons that don't do their job very well. I remember seeing that as a kid, and it terrified the life out of me. But the climax is great in the Room of Mirrors. The standoff with Bruce Lee and the main villain. Of course, it's got the famous nunchuck scene, which is fantastic. Yeah, really, really good. Number 2 for me is an absolute childhood staple of mine. It's Disney's Robin Hood. I just absolutely adore this film. Yeah, for me, it's a strange one because this was sort of my introduction to Back to the Future. It's a bit of a long story, but when my parents were pregnant with me, and they found out they were going to have a boy, my parents taped Robin Hood off the TV for me to watch as I grew up, and it caught loads of adverts, and one of them was a TV spot for Back to the Future 2, and I was like, oh my god, what's that film? And I grew up watching this so many times. Prince John is one of Disney's greatest villains. Absolutely hysterical. The scenes with him where as soon as he's in peril and he just turns into an absolute coward are hilarious. His right-hand man, Hiss, as well, is great. The Sheriff of Nottingham is absolutely cruel as hell to the poor. He'll just rinse them for every penny he's got. The theme as well, whistled by the rooster at the start, is just the catchiest thing ever. I love, there's just great scenes in it. I love the scene where they have the breakout at Prince John's castle. The archery tournament itself is fantastic. The climax is great too. So yeah, real personal favourite of mine, that one. My number 1 is about as far away from Disney as you could possibly get. It's possibly my favourite horror film, and it's William Friedkin's The Exorcist. I saw this movie for the first time when I was about 12, which was a huge mistake because really not the right age to see this film. This is the director's cut, which also has the infamous scene with the spider walk in it, which is creepy as hell. Absolutely adore the horror elements of this film. I mean, obviously it does have the whole the whole demon aspect to it, which is terrifying. That's definitely there in the film. But for me, my favourite parts are with the younger priest and how the demon messes with his head so badly. I mean, my favorite scene, which has a callback in the film, is when the priest is he's down in the subway and he sees a homeless person, and the homeless man says to him, "Can you spare? Can you help an old altar boy out, a Catholic boy? Can you spare some change? Help me out." And he just looks at him, and it cuts away to the next scene. And then later on in the film, when he's actually confronting the demon that's taken over Reagan, Reagan says that back to him in the voice of the homeless person, "Can you spare something?" And that just creeped me out. It sent chills down my spine. Yeah, the end scene as well is so great. The actual exorcism itself. Lee J. Cobb's great in it. Max von Sydow's great in it. Linda Blair's great in it as well. It does have those scenes as well that are really disturbing, really, really terrifying. I watched it with my my girlfriend for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and she thought it was a good film. And yeah, it's great. The disturbing scenes are obviously, if you've seen the film, obviously the masturbation with the crucifix scene is very, very full on. The actual possession itself, what the demon says at the end as well, the way the demon messes with the priest's mind about, you know, his recently deceased mother. You know, she blames him. The demon just completely messes with his head and blaming him for the fact his mother died alone. He wasn't there. It's real messes with your head stuff. You know, and he questions faith as well, and really, really, really solid film. It's pretty much, and also another disturbing scene for me as well is when there's a party going on downstairs, and Reagan comes downstairs from her bedroom, and she sees her mum getting on with all her friends and that, and all you just see is the back of Reagan's head. And she says to one of the there's a party guest there who's an astronaut, and she just looks at him and says, "You're gonna die up there." And then she just she pisses herself, just wets herself all over the floor. Really, really grim stuff. But it's such a well-made film. The end of it actually surprised me as well. The resolution as to how the demon does get exorcised was pretty surprising to me. But yeah, it's one that sticks with me, and it's a fantastic horror film. Really, really good. So yeah, that's my top 15 films from 1973. Thanks very much for watching. I should be back soon with 1974. I got that one back down to top 10. So yeah, thanks very much and take care.